Let's have a go at this exam style question on ecosystems. The question says, Figure 1 shows a kite diagram showing the distribution of 3 plants at each sampling point. Describe the distribution of species A, B and C, and that's worth 3 marks. Now let's start by identifying the command word, and I can see it down here. It's the word describe. So we're being asked to give an account of the distribution of the 3 different plant species A, B and C. Now let's unpick the question a bit more by having a closer look at the information we're given. The first sentence up here uses the term kite diagram. And remember, kite diagrams are used to show the distribution of organisms and how they change across an area. And this is done using a piece of equipment called a transect, which is like a large measuring tape, and counting the number of organisms of a given species at set distances along the transect. So if we look at this graph, on the x-axis it says distance from high tide mark. So that's the highest point at which the tide comes in. So the furthest the sea comes in at high tide. And then on the y-axis, we've got the different species up here. So in this case, we can see that the graph's given us the number of these different species every 200 metres, because it's starting at 100 metres here, and then it's going up to 300, 500. So every 200 metres, they've counted the number of species A, B and C. Now we need to say which species is found where along the transect. So we can see from this kite diagram that species A up here is actually found furthest from the sea, because this is the high tide mark, this is the distance from the high tide mark. So we could say that species A is actually found furthest away from the high tide mark, or from furthest away from the sea, whereas species C, which is shown here, is found closest to the sea, and species B, which is shown here, between those points, is sort of in between. Now, a good word to use in our answer is the term abundance. And this means how large a quantity of something. So if something's abundant, then there's a lot of it. So let's have a go at writing an answer. And I'm going to write species A is most abundant further from the sea. While species C is most abundant closest to the sea. Now we just need to mention species B. So if we write species B is most abundant between species A and C. Right, so you've got 3 marks there. So the first mark will be for talking about species A, which we've done first of all. In the first sentence, species A is most abundant further from the sea. Second mark for mentioning where we find species C, while species C is most abundant closest to the sea in the second part of this first sentence. And finally, we mention where we find species B being most abundant between species A and C. So that would be the third mark.